Welcome to the Big Sis Little Sis podcast. I'm Elle.
And I'm Ruby.
And we're two ethnic sisters here to talk about all things culture, feminism, and business.
Join us for weekly unfiltered and unapologetically female opinions and join in on the conversation.
Welcome to the Big Sis Little Sis podcast. I'm Elle.
And I'm Ruby.
And we are so excited to be back here on a not so beautiful day today in Brisbane, actually. It was really sunny this morning, but
that's Queensland for you.
You get the rains, then you get the sun.
So, Al, I was wanting to recap a little bit on last week's episode titled The Ovarian Lottery, where we talked about how your life can be impacted by the postcode that you're born into.
Yes, and we have had some amazing feedback and we appreciate that. Loved reading every little bit of it. Some people were extremely excited and happy, and some people shared their honest opinion, which we also appreciated.
Yeah.
And every single comment is welcome, guys, and we are just so excited that you guys are interested and commenting.
Yeah, so thank you so much for everyone who took the time to let us know what they were thinking and feeling. Whether you agree or disagree with us, we're totally open to it. So keep the conversation flowing because we're loving it.
Yes, it's good.
So some of the feedback that we were getting was around specifically the fact that we talked about things like education and how perhaps your potential may be limited by the fact that you were born and raised in a certain postcode. Some of you disagreed, and that's okay. That's entirely your opinion. But what I wanted to do now was just bring some merit to what I was saying and just tell you a little bit about some census data.
Just want to make a point, Ruby. We weren't disregarding teachers.
Not at all.
I have so many friends who actually love being a teacher and chose it because it's their passion, and that's wonderful. It was the fact that we are culturally pressured into jobs that are more appropriate for women.
Yes.
And we don't realize this, and we do choose it. For example, I wanted to become a pilot when I was in year 10. And I remember being so excited and running home and telling my parents, oh, I know what I want to be. I want to be a pilot. And yes, they were excited for me. But their instant reaction was, oh, but how will you have a family? And then I stopped to think, oh, how will I have a family? Because that's all we see around us. Because, you know, the women are trained, or it's embedded in our brains that, you know, ultimately you need to pick a career that's suitable, you know, so that you can have a family.
Yes.
Whereas the men are kind of raised to be a little bit more flexible in that sense.
Exactly. So I think, you know, what we're trying to understand is where it drills down to, you know, male and female roles, particularly in familyhood, because men are really sort of classified as a secondary parent. That's why they have more options in terms of career path. If it's okay if they're away from home a little bit more than women.
Yep.
And not limiting our youth, our women, to choose a career that may potentially impact or not impact their future families. So if you're somebody who doesn't want to have children, of course you can have whatever career you want.
Exactly. And these aren't things that are talked, like, they're not spoken about out loud. It's not like your parents are sitting down with you and saying, you know what, I think you should be a teacher because of this. It just comes naturally, because that's what we see around the community. You know, you see your parents' friends teachers, and then you think, okay, that's good. And then, you know, subtle comments of, oh, you know, you get time off during the school holidays. So in your mind, you think, oh, okay, I'll be with the kids during the school holidays.
And that's not a bad thing.
No.
It's awesome. Like, you know, the more I think about it, I've got two best friends who are both very successful teachers. And I get so jealous. They're like, oh, I'm on school holidays now. I'm like, oh, you bitch.
Yeah.
I'm still working. I only get two freaking days off
excuse
a
me.
week.
At least you get to select when you have your annual leave.
Yes, that's true.
Whereas they don't. But also, that's the same with being pressured into marriage at an early age. Again, it's not your parents sitting down and saying, I think it's time for you to get married now. That was not my experience at all.
Not at all.
But it was slight, subtle comments, or your friends who are starting to get engaged, or your parents, you kind of see how excited they are that, you know, so-and-so's child got engaged.
Oh, Elle, how many times have you heard the phrase, Dada Sabashina? Yeah.
Which means...
oh, we hope you're next. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the subtle pressures. It's the pressure that, you know, it's not talked about straight into your face, but yeah, it's hinted and it's there, and that's what we want to break. Hopefully reach out to somebody and let them see what we have been seeing.
Yes, absolutely. So just going back to that census data, because there is actually a difference, you guys. I wasn't kidding. I'm not kidding when I say that you are being limited.
No, and you are.
By your postcode, because
we were.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And, I think about, my two girlfriends who are teachers, and they see the potential in some of their students.
Yep.
They do work at more low socioeconomic schools. And they feel awful for the 1 or 2 or 5 students who really want it and they really want to do something, but they're being held back by the rest of their class. The things that they are learning may not be on track with some of the private schools, which cost $20,000-$30,000 a year to attend. So I'm not saying that, on a physical capacity we're lesser. Absolutely not. I'm saying perhaps our potential might be limited because of the funding and the education level that we are being placed upon because of that community.
And look, the prime example is my brother. He went to a school that wasn't amazing, and he didn't do so well, didn't have the right set of friends, so he wasn't encouraged at school, wasn't excited. Very intelligent man. And he had to go through different stages in life, and then he decided, okay, well, I want to do something with my life, and I want to go to university. And then he had to take a course at TAFE, and then he went to university. Now he's a biomedical scientist and is bloody brilliant, but he had to go through those stages purely because he wasn't, he didn't have the opportunity to go to this amazing school and be surrounded by successful people and have this passion from the beginning. Not that he wasn't smart, intelligent, or quite capable. It's just, unfortunately, unless you are the minority and you're so driven yourself, and you're not affected by these people, which,
you have barriers.
You have barriers, and it's a small percentage of people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the Hume community, or the Hume City Council, has a lot of schools that don't do so well.
Yep.
And imagine all the potential and the amazing, intelligent people that are kind of just, that go with the flow and don't reach their full potential because they're let down by these schools.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Elle, it's actually something I went through as well. I mentioned in the last episode, I went to Pescador Girls for a short period of time, which is a public school. My parents then, made the great decision of moving me over to a private school located in West Meadows called Ishik College. A lot of you guys have probably been there as well. I think it's now called Sirius College, and it was the best thing they ever did for me, because of the people and the surroundings that I was put into. So I was taken from an area where I had no interest in study. I was all about having fun. I was busy out every weekend with friends. They put me into this environment where all the people around me were so focused and driven, and they wanted to succeed. And as a result, I was more focused and driven. So my potential was now being unlocked.
Exactly.
And a lot of my peers from that school are now doing amazing things. They're optometrists, they're doctors, they're physios, they're incredible women. They're not being limited by their potential because we were given the right opportunity.
Exactly. I mean, I remember early on in year 7 or 8, my music teacher saying, look, you are really good at the piano. You really should tell your parents to get some private lessons and really focus on this. Now, coming from a family of 4 children,
One income.
That's hard. It didn't happen, and I get it. Like, it's hard that they're on survival mode. They're just trying to get by. They're doing their absolute best. My parents were really big on education. They made sure we had tutors when we needed them, went to special courses when we needed them. Mm-hmm. They did their absolute best, but it was limited. So if I was possibly born into a family that had no limitation, and I was maybe getting these lessons from the age of 4, maybe my life would have been different, and maybe my passion would have been different. So, yes, could I have done it myself?
Yes.
But how much? Like, you need to be trained from a young age as well.
To what extent?
Exactly. So, do you want to talk about the census data?
Yeah, so going back to that census data that I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to show you where the distinction actually lies. So looking through the 2016 census data on 2 councils, so we're talking about Hume Council and we're talking about Stonington Council.
So Stonington Council, which suburbs is
that? So that encapsulates South Yarra, Toorak, Malvern, Glen Iris, those suburbs. So 75% of women in the Stonington Council have an education level of bachelor degree and above.
Wow, that's big.
It's
That's amazing.
75%.
75%.
Compared to the Hume women who have a bachelor education and above, 38%.
Yeah. And, that breaks my heart.
It breaks my
heart. I want our community to do amazing. And I want the women to be so, educated and strong and independent and not have to rely on a man. And there are so many women that can't even leave marriages because
they're dependent.
They're dependent and they don't know what to do. Or, they're like, what job am I going to work in? Because I haven't, educated myself in anything or trained myself in anything. And it's just a lack of confidence. And when you lack the confidence, you can't stand up for yourself when you are in bad situations or bad marriages.
Exactly. So what we're trying to achieve is just some awareness from all of our listeners and to think about how to break this cycle. If you think that you're in the cycle, you may totally disagree with us.
And please give us ideas. Let us know what you think. It's a big cycle to break and it's been there for so long. And I just feel like, Ruby, we have been moving so slow.
Yep. It's
just this slow progression. I mean, we're going to get to the topic of today, but even in marriage life and roles at the house and, women working, it's just, I feel like in our community, things are not moving as fast as it should.
Absolutely. So that brings us to today's topic, which is titled The Art of the Good Wife.
Now, what makes a good wife?
So, I just want to preface this by just exploring, a little bit about a traditional wife and those roles and how it's changed through time. So, as I mentioned, more of us are being educated, more of us are working. So, pretty much everyone works to some capacity.
Well, you need to work. I'm sorry, you need double income.
Absolutely.
To survive.
To even afford a mortgage these days, you need two incomes, right? In the
I don't
household.
think they give you a mortgage unless you have two incomes.
Yeah, so given the fact that we are working, we are bringing in money and contributing to our households, how does this now translate to the share of domestic duties in the household?
Okay, so this is a topic that, it changes from each household, obviously. Ruby's household and her relationship with her husband are very, very different to how mine was with my ex-husband. So I went from a household where, my mother treated my brother and my sisters and I as equals.
Yes.
He would have to hang the laundry, he will have to do the dishes, even pour the tea. He would do everything that we did. He was not treated any different. So I respect my mother greatly for doing that. And I can see how that has changed or made him into a real independent adult, Ruby. He doesn't need somebody to do anything for him.
Yep.
He can cook for himself, wash for himself, do everything for himself, which is amazing. And so he should, because he's an adult and he needs to be, I think every person needs to be able to take care of themselves.
Absolutely.
It's not about, the woman taking care of the man anymore. Okay, so we came from a household like that, which was amazing. And then I married my ex-husband. Now, very, very different person. So he came from a household where the women would take care of the men. So in his mind, this was the norm. And that's what should be done. And actually, somebody gave him a tip. I remember him telling me this when we first got married. Still don't know who this person is. I will find you. And I'll hunt you down. It was 12 years of my life.
Dare you?
How dare you? And said, this is disgusting. Do not ever do anything. Pretend like you don't know. Because if you do it once, you're stuck with it.
Oh, wow.
And he admitted this to me later. And I was like, which asshole?
Yeah.
Which asshole said that to you and you just played stupid? Oh, I don't know, whatever. Quite capable of doing everything. He does it now. And it's funny now, we can have a conversation about this and laugh about it and say, and then he's doing the laundry and doing the dishes and showing the boys how to do these things.
Yep.
And I love that because they went from, they were in a household where I was doing most of the chores, not most, all of the chores inside the house. You know, of course he was doing, you know, the external chores or the gardening or whatever. So in their minds, because I've got two boys, it was like the women does the dishes.
Yes.
The women do the cooking. And when I had Ruby and my other sister staying at my house and their husbands, they all do everything equally shared. It was funny. My son turned to me and said, "Mum, like Urka's doing the dishes." I was like, "Yes, like that's
Men
normal."
can do things too.
I'm like, so now I'm like, okay, so now that we're out of a household where that wasn't the case, it's funny how my ex-husband and I are both training the children, and apparently he was washing dishes at his house last night, which is fantastic, you know, and now I'm teaching the children, you know, after you eat, you rinse your dish, you pop it in the dishwasher. And that's the sort of adult I want them to be, Ruby.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be relying on a woman.
No, and they shouldn't. It should be ingrained from a young age that this is habitual. These are daily tasks. This is how you lessen the burden on your family, is by doing your part. And I expect it. I mean, in my household, when I got married to my husband, sure, there were a few things that he really didn't know how to do because his mum was taking care of it. I mean, he doesn't have any sisters, so it was just him, his dad, his brother, and his mum. And so when we got married and we moved out, and I went, have you ever done a load of laundry before? Come, let me show you. And so it was just the fact that he was open to the change.
Yep, that's amazing.
This is really the difference in, having a feminist household. Is your husband or your partner, your boyfriend, whatever, open to change?
Exactly. Because, and I know how Turkish mothers can be. We're caretakers, or, like we're trained to be caretakers, and I guess mothers in general, they just want to make their children happy.
Of course.
And it's hard. Sometimes even though I know my son should be doing something, sometimes it's just easier to do it.
Of course.
And sometimes you feel bad for them. They come home from school and you just look at them and you're like, "Oh, just rest. You're my little baby. You're my little angel." And then I'm like, "No, snap out of it. No, you have to pack your school bag yourself. You have to go do this yourself."
Yeah.
But it hurts.
It does. I know.
So I get how we got to this stage. And I think ethnic people are a little bit more emotional and obsessive with their children. Like even the way we refer to our child. It's like my love, my world. Whereas, my Australian friends will refer, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
Mate.
Hey, little mate.
Like, it's just, I think we're just so emotional.
We're obsessed.
And we do get very obsessed with our children.
Yeah. I've written a book, and I forgot the name of the book, but there was a section on, this whole labour burden thing in a household. And we're not just talking about physical burdens, because it's not just about who cooks and who cleans and who mops and who vacuums.
Oh, there's a lot more.
There is a significant portion of emotional burden that comes when a woman takes majority of the labour. And I'm talking about simple things which you may not even, consider. I'm talking about who plans birthday parties, who plans dentist appointments,
haircuts,
who remembers anniversaries, and don't forget to get your mother-in-law some flowers for Mother's Day. These are all little things which I can almost guarantee most of you are like, yep, I do that.
Yep.
Because we can't help but take the responsibility, because we consider our men sometimes to be a bit incapable, but also we let them get away with it.
Exactly. I mean, prime example. I remember my ex-husband wanting to take the boys for a haircut last year, early on in the year, and I was like, okay, I'm a little pedantic. I mean, it could be just me, but I'm a little pedantic with haircuts. And I was like, okay, it's got to be number 2, number 3. And, the older one's hair falls that way. Make sure they cut it this way. The younger one's like this, da-da-da-da. And he just looked at me and he was like, "Oh, do you want to do it?"
You do it instead.
And I was like, you know what? I'll just do it.
Yeah.
But now he's taken on that responsibility.
Yeah.
And he's quite, yes, the first few haircuts were not so good, but now he's worked it out. And the boys are coming back to me with these amazing and absolutely cool haircuts. So are they quite capable of doing it?
Yes,
they are. So do we need to let them try?
Of course.
Yes.
And encourage
We
them
do.
to try. Teach them. I taught my husband how to do laundry once, and now he's got it. It's fine. And that's all it takes. And you say, "Oh, hey, can you just do a lot of laundry?" No problem. And if they need help along the way, help them. But as long as they're contributing. And if you have a husband or a partner who doesn't contribute to your household as much.
It's hurtful, Ruby.
It's hurtful, but
It's hurtful.
we encourage you to have this conversation
Yeah.
with them, because if you're working full-time or part-time, whatever, even if you're a stay-at-home mum full-time and you've got a lot on your hands, you ask for help and you get the help that you deserve.
Exactly. And look, because these men, or the majority of these men, have been raised in households, like we mentioned, you know, where the mum was doing everything for them. So it is new for them. And I mean, I was in the same situation where, you know, I wasn't respected for even asking for help at the time, because it's like a woman's duty almost. But it was unspoken about. It wasn't like he would state this is a woman's duty, but you can just tell from the body language that it was just expected of me. You know, I was the one who had to do everything. And it was tiring, Ruby.
Yeah.
You're exhausted. It's like at one point I was working full time with 2 small babies, coming home. I mean, he would do childcare, drop off and pick up, and that was a job for him.
Well done. Congratulations.
And, you know, pick them up, bring them home, and I would run around. It was chaotic. It was like I didn't have time to cook. So I'd have to cook the night before. So I had food and I'd have to heat it up. And I was really big on feeding my kids organic and making sure they had home cooked meals. As you know, my little obsessions.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like overworking myself. And I was living in Turkey for 5 years, which is I think I'd have to have an episode on the cultural differences.
Oh, so different.
So different. So it's like your expectation levels are super, super high, and anyone can drop by anytime. So your house has to be clean all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. So you literally have to vacuum when you have, you know, you're working full time. You got like daily, if not twice a day, because you have children.
It's intense.
It is so intense. So I was doing all of those things, and by 9 o'clock, because the kids' bedtime was 9 o'clock in Turkey.
Oh.
So different. And that was early for them. They're like, 9 o'clock? I'm like, people put their kids to bed at 7 in Australia. They're like, what do you mean? That's not even dinner time. I'm like...
Dinner time's at 4.
Oh, anyway. But yeah, so, you know, putting the kids to bed, and then I'm like, okay, now that they're in bed, I can cook dinner for tomorrow night. And then once I got a moment to myself, it was, I felt really exhausted. And I know lots of women who go through that, who live that life for so many years.
Yes. And you know what, Al? This may be a little bit controversial or hard for some of you to hear, but when you go through so much physical and emotional, marathons in such a day, and then it's the end of the night, and now you have one final duty, because guess what? You're still a woman and you're still a wife.
You're still a wife.
And now you have expectations to, satisfy your husband. You're like, and it just becomes one more chore.
One more duty.
And you stop enjoying yourself as a woman because you're so freaking overworked.
Yeah.
It puts a strain on your marriage in new ways.
Exactly. I mean, and you know what? Women out there that have those husbands that are bloody amazing, that come home, and I've got so many friends whose husbands, who are Turkish, do this, and, I applaud those men. And I applaud you for selecting those men.
Yeah.
Well done. You've made a good choice. But, there are men out there that haven't, or that don't do those things. And those are the women that we hope to be a voice for. And, slow changes, small changes. It's not like, you rush to your husband and say, why aren't you helping me with this? No.
Not at all.
It's going to be a process, and it takes time, but let's speed it up a little.
Yeah. You deserve respect. You deserve to be equal in a domestic household.
I mean,
So ask
if you're
for it.
both working especially, and you're
course.
both bringing in an income, how is it even fair?
No,
and
it's
how
not.
are men even getting away with this
Do
in
not.
this day and age? That I do not understand.
So Al, I have a funny story to share. So
I love your stories.
I love my
Please,
stories too.
Please entertain us.
my poor husband, he's always the butt of the story. So one time, my dear husband, who doesn't generally cook, because I love cooking, that's my thing, and I haven't really given him the freedom to do so much cooking in our house. He decided, I'm going to cook for you. And I said, okay, skepticism, of course.
Oh, she's a tad bit of a control
I'm a
freak
control freak.
also.
Yeah, so anyway, he goes out to the shops to buy all these ingredients for this one dish that he's going to make. he buys, multiple spices that we already have at home and ingredients because, just in case.
Of course he does.
It was on the recipe list. He doesn't know how to, I think this is just men who don't really know how to read recipes, don't know how to omit or change things. They think, it's 10 grams of this. It's got to be 10 grams of this. Anyway, so he comes home, he does his thing, he cooks. He asks a few times, what does that mean? What is it to saute? How do I know if it's cooked, etc.? That's fine. And he serves up this beautiful dish. It was delicious, like an Asian stir fry or something. And it was good. And then the next day comes. And the next day, I am like vomiting. I have gastro. I'm sick.
Poor
and
thing.
I'm like to him, you did this to me. You made me sick. What did you do?
Bitch.
And he was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. This is not what was supposed to happen.
Oh, poor guy. It's like the one time he tries.
The one time he tried and I got sick. Meanwhile, it actually wasn't even his fault. It was something I had at one of my auntie's houses earlier because multiple people were sick. And I just felt so bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But yeah, did he ever cook again?
No.
No.
Bitch, it's all your fault. So don't
It's my fault.
don't go complaining now.
Just around the point of what we want to see from, our community and moving forward, because it's about perpetuating a cycle, and we do not want to perpetuate this cycle of inequality in domestic households. Have the conversation with your partner, with your husband, with your brother, whoever it may be that you're living with. Could be your dad even. Start to push those boundaries as well.
Exactly. And you know what? We have been pushing lots of boundaries and it works.
It does work. The more you hassle, the more shit gets done, basically.
Okay. So another thing that's a taboo in the community, which I would like to discuss, is 50-50 custody. So my ex-husband and I, we do share custody, 50-50. And I did receive some backlash from family. Even his family, Ruby, which is surprising, saying, why would you give your kids to him? How is he going to take care of them? Almost to imply that I'm not a good mother for allowing their own father to take care of his own children.
Yep.
So this is why I'm really passionate about this subject, because literally living it myself. And yes, in the beginning, I was concerned. I wasn't concerned he was not going to be able to take care of them, in all honesty. I mean, yes, did he do much around the house? No, but I knew he was quite capable of doing anything. But it was more the worry of, missing my children and not being there for them and, being the person that they need to run to when they're unwell or if they had a bad dream. So at first, when having this discussion with him, it worried me, and you're going through so much emotionally and, it's hard, guys. And they say divorce is one of the hardest. It is really hard because you're adjusting to a new life and you're so concerned about the children. I'm sure divorce without children will be much different. But your main concern is always the children. And so it should be. And I think in those marriages marriages where the main concern is not the child, that's when things get really nasty. Yeah. And that's where custody problems, they get really, really nasty.
And using the child as a tool for revenge.
As a tool. So actually, I did read somewhere that men use money to hurt the woman and women use children. And it's horrible. You need to be able to put your emotions aside. Whatever anger, hurt feeling, upset, whatever you're feeling at the time.
Yep.
And think about the best interest of your child.
Yep.
And we did go to a psychologist just to discuss how we should be running things because we had no idea. I have no one around me that's divorced, Ruby, who is Turkish because, you live a different lifestyle. And you think, hang on, I parent differently. Like, how am I supposed to handle this situation? Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of research and I found that, the thought of 50-50 custody, terrifying. I was like, no way. But okay, let me put my own emotional shit aside. Let's just think about what's going to be good for my children. So I did a lot of research and the University of Sweden did actually really intensive research on 50-50 custody and how it affects the children. And they found that children who come from families with, shared custody, equal shared custody, are a lot more emotionally stable, independent, confident, psychologically well children compared to those who come from like a single parent household with, limited exposure to their secondary parent.
Yep.
And that to me was, okay, exciting, because my ex-husband was really interested in being a part of the children's lives, which, was great. And I know in some situations, the man is simply not interested, which is sad. Or if there is like abuse, drugs, and just, it's not a safe environment for your child, obviously that's a whole different story. I mean, but if your ex-husband is quite happy to take your children, it is so exciting, especially going from having no exposure to the kids practically because he worked 7 days a week and only came home when they were asleep, limited. Of course, he saw them on the weekends and stuff here and there, but it went from no dad almost when we were married. So this is a silver lining of divorce. This is interesting. To now they have their dad like present, active, playing with them, teaching them life skills, teaching them even how to wash the dishes, which I find amazing, dropping them off to school, picking them up, asking about their school. Like, I feel like he changed as a person and his values have changed. And it's just worked out so amazing for my children. So the moment anybody even questions our custody situation, do they hear a big comment from me? Because I am just so happy with the way things have worked out for my children. Yes, it takes time to adjust. And my poor little guy said the other day, oh, Mum, like the rotation is just so annoying. Like, you don't get it, Mum. You live in the one house. Like, I have to live in two, and he's 8, but he is so intelligent, this kid. He just says it as it is.
Smarty pants.
He is. And I get it. And I was like, look, I understand. It's not easy, but, you're going to get used to it. And it's amazing you have 2 households. And it's amazing you get to see your dad and you get to build these strong emotional, relationships with him. And that's one thing I said to my ex-husband. I said, I want them to run to you when they have a problem as well, not just me. I don't want them to hide anything from you. I don't want them to be, fearful of their father. I don't want them to be distant.
You don't want it to be a don't tell your mum, don't tell your dad type of situation.
And I mean, I don't know what will happen in the future, but if things do continue the way they have been, and I think they will, which is amazing. So don't listen to your parents. They don't know.
If you're in a situation, and you're considering doing 50-50 custody.
And don't feel pressured. I am telling you, do not feel pressured by your parents, his parents, the community, your aunties, your uncles who say, oh, no, the kids won't turn out right. No. All a child needs is time with their mum and their dad.
Yes.
And you know what? I read in another research that it's also really good for the parents because you take a break. It's so exhausting being a parent.
Give yourself a break, ladies.
You take a break. So when you do have your children, you are present, Ruby. You're not just like, oh, yeah, okay, have TV. You're not tight because you have the time off as well. I mean, I'm not promoting divorce and 50-50 custody here. I'm promoting 50-50 custody if you are getting divorced, not divorce. But you do get that time. And so you know what? My kids are getting the best of their dad and their mum. So maybe they'll turn out better than they would have if we did remain in the marriage and their dad was not present and it was just me being absolutely exhausted and, grumpy and a bitch. So now they get,
they get everything because now their mental health is taken care of, but so is yours.
Exactly. So this is one barrier, I think, in the community that I hope we could break. I hope that if somebody's out there right now and they are in a situation where they're discussing custody and they feel afraid, don't feel afraid. Unless he is, not a good person and you are genuinely worried for your child's well-being, and the safety of your children, let him try and he will learn. Yes, you probably could burn a few meals for your kids at first, but I'm sure he'll get the hang of it. And they do, because men are quite capable of doing everything that women can except childbirth.
Yes. That's a whole other can of worms. And they're not secondary parents. You know, when you give your children to your partner, he's not babysitting them because they're his.
Yeah.
I mean, he's their dad.
But you know what? It feels that way. I mean, I know when I was married and I'm just going to go, but is that okay? Can I leave the kids? But it's like, why do I feel like he's doing me a favor? Like, they are both our responsibilities. Like, and this is still happening in lots of households.
Yep.
Alrighty, so that brings us to the end of this week's episode, The Art of Being a Good Wife. We are waiting for your feedback. We want to read it. You know,
We
disagree, agree, tell us. We want to hear your stories.
If you are in a relationship which has a very equal share of responsibilities, or perhaps it's unequal, similar with custody with your children, we'd like to hear about it. Tell us about your experiences.
Exactly. And especially custody, that I'm really interested to hear about and what people are going through, because everybody's experience is completely different. I mean, you know, I've had a really positive experience, so I'm happy about that. But I know that some people don't, and it's extremely difficult.
As always, we're here for you. If you want to reach out and chat to us, find us on the Big Sis Little Sis Instagram. But for now, we'll see you guys all next week.
Next week.
Take care.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.